This is the Wing Woman Show. Are you ready?
You're listening to The Wing Woman Show, and this is your host, Morgan Bars. Today's episode comes in perfect timing as all of our small business owners and personal brands out there are gearing up for the holiday season. I thought that this was the perfect time to bring on one of my favorite accountants, and she is with Conscious Accounting based here in St. Pete. Rebecca has been incredibly helpful for me as I'm building out Wing Woman. So I wanted to bring her on so that our audience can learn how they can best organize their accounting and bookkeeping processes just in time for holiday season when you are hopefully going to get an influx of sales for this year, especially with 2020, everything being online. Rebecca is truly a fun accountant, and I think that you'll see that shine through on our interview today. So without further ado, let's tune into today's conversation. Okay, so
Okay.
walk us back to the very beginning when you transitioned from being a teacher into now a small business owner as an accountant.
Yeah. So it's kind of actually starts with me being like a little kid, actually. So
Really?
yeah, when I was little, I had this like hobby of organizing and categorizing things. It was like my passion. So I took all my children's books and put little labels on them with the like initials of the author and
I
found different.
love a good organizer.
Oh, yes. And I would like, this is like 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old me just
Oh
being
my
like,
gosh.
let's try organizing them by last name. Let's do first name. Let's do book title. Let's do all these different ways. And I think I was inspired by the elementary school library
Uh-huh.
teaching me about the Dewey Decimal System. I was like, this is amazing. This is going to be my new hobby. I don't need to do sports. I don't need any of
No.
that. I need to be categorizing children's books in my bedroom.
Yeah.
So I set up like a desk and I was like, would pretend that like, so my dad was like, okay, Rebecca, you are going to be an accountant when you grow up because I was always really good at numbers and math. So
Uh-huh.
he's like, organizing numbers, you're going to be an accountant. And I was like, no, I want to help people. And there's no way I could possibly be helping people if I'm an accountant because
Right.
in my mind, accountants are boring, stuffy, greedy, like it's all about
Right.
like money and taxes and finance and just like very masculine and just kind of not warm and fuzzy and not helping people. And I was like, I want to make a difference in people's lives. And there's no way you can do that with accounting. So
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, I was like, I got to find a different career that uses numbers that helps people. So my mom was a teacher, and I had other teachers in the family. It was kind of like a
A
family
teacher
thing,
family, yeah.
a teacher family. So I was like, I'll just be a teacher, and that way I can help people and talk about numbers, my
Right.
favorite things. So I became a middle school math teacher and definitely got to help a lot of people. And I felt really good about the work. It felt very meaningful. Um, but I didn't feel like the curriculum itself was super meaningful. And working in a public school, we weren't allowed to teach anything besides what the curriculum
Mm.
was, because it was all in a public school system. It's all about standardized testing and getting our students to score as high as possible because then our school can get more funding.
Right.
So it was always teach to the test is what they would say. Like, is this something that a student is going to need when they grow
Mm-hmm.
up, or is this valuable? It wasn't about that. It was about teach to the test so that our school can get more funding. And as a teacher, we'd actually get pink slipped or laid off if our students didn't
Wow.
score well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of pressure too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on the school district. I taught in a rural town in Vermont 1 year, and then I moved to Boston and I taught like in an urban
Mm-hmm.
school. And that was the one where there was a lot of pressure for funding with the teach to the test kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my students would be like, why do we need to learn this? And a lot of times in my head, I like couldn't think of a single reason besides
Right.
so our school can get more funding. Like it wasn't actually like learning how to graph an inequality like from scratch instead of use
Mm-hmm.
like a computer to do it. Like I don't know why you need to learn that. It's like you don't, you're
Right.
never going to use that, and there wasn't any space in the school year for me to teach anything practical, like, you
Mhm.
know, what's debt, what's a credit card, what are student loans, you know, any of that, like
Right.
that wasn't allowed to be taught. And also as a teacher, you have to bring a lot of work home. You have to grade everything. You're dealing with parents a lot.
Mm.
And then you have to plan all your lessons. So you always have to be thinking, like, you're never done. You're going to teach. What's the next thing?
Mhm.
And if you ever get sick, you have to have sub plans written for a sub. So you can't just spontaneously be sick. You have to still plan.
Right. You can't just call out sick like a normal job.
Exactly. And you can't just like be like, you know what, I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee, or I'm going to just check my Instagram
Right.
real quick, because you're on stage the entire day. Like
Right.
you can't be like, you know what, my doctor's going to be calling with my blood test results, I'm going to like keep my phone near me and answer it. You can't, because you're on stage performing,
Right.
you know? So I was like, okay, I really like the helping people part. I love my
Mhm.
students. I love talking about the Pythagorean theorem all day. That part's great. But the lifestyle of this is like, but the lifestyle is draining. And I just wanted to make sure I like really loved it before
Right.
I did it for like 30 or 40 more years. Because as a teacher, unless you want to be a principal, you're just going to do the same job every.
Mhm.
I was kind of like hesitant to like give this for my forever, you know,
Right.
commitment. And my dad was like, well, you got to stay for the pension, because, you know, in 40 years, you're going to get a pension.
In
And
40 years.
yeah. And I'm like 20. Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. Like, I just want to be happy, and I want to like hang out with my friends on the weekend instead of write lesson plans. And,
Mhm.
you know, like, I just want some balance in my life. And,
Mhm.
you know, so I decided to take a summer, because we don't teach in the summer. So I took a summer to come to Florida to visit a friend in St. Petersburg, where I, you know, had heard was like a really cool area.
Yeah.
Um, and I was so sick of the winters up north. And I was like, let me just see what it feels like. Let me just try it on this summer of what it feels like to live down there. And if I find a job and if everything works out, maybe I'll just won't go back. And I told my principal, and she was like, I totally get it. You know, as soon as you're done your quarter life crisis, just let me know and we'll get you back in the classroom. Like, you know, she was just like, just come back when, as soon as you
Right.
change your
Right.
mind, like, we don't want to lose you,
Well,
but
that's really nice because you had a plan B while you were trying to pursue a better plan A.
exactly. And you get paid throughout the summer, even though you're not teaching. Like, they split
Mm.
up your pay. Like, so I had
Right.
like an income while I was doing this, while I was like soul searching
Right.
for a few months. Um, so I had to kind of act quickly, you know? So I decided to move here you know, I didn't have to pay rent for a while. So it was like kind of like financially, it was like not stressful.
Right.
It was just a good like situation a unique situation that I found. And I started working at this gourmet market called Locale Market that has
Mm.
since closed, but it hadn't opened yet. And they were looking for all sorts of positions to hire before they opened. And I walked into their job fair and I was like, I'm a middle school math teacher. I don't want to be that anymore, but I don't know what to be. And your branding, like, everything looks really cool. I think
Yeah.
I want to be part of this, but I don't know why I'm here. Just, can you tell me why I'm here? And they were like, I don't know how to job place you. Like, that's not really, we don't need a math teacher. And they were like, are you good at anything else? And I was like, well, I really like organizing and categorizing and
Mhm.
spreadsheets. I love spreadsheets. And they were like, okay. So they were like, we're going to call you. We need to talk, like, huddle up about this, and then we'll call you. So they called me back and they were like, are you cool with us just like having you work on the back end, like in the back offices, and we'll just have you do like number spreadsheety type things, like as we see
Yeah.
fit, and just kind of go with it? And I was like, sure. Um, so I ended up setting up like all the products in the store so that they could ring up at the register. Like, there was like a
Mm.
database that needed to be built and a lot of stuff on the
Wow.
back end. And
That's a
that was like,
lot.
it was so fun though.
Oh, I'm
So
sure you loved it.
yeah. So I loved that. And it still wasn't like accounting, but it was more like, okay. And like being in an office, it was like, wait, I can just like go to the bathroom. Like if I need to go, like I don't have to
Right.
wait till like the bell rings. Like this is so cool. Like, you know, so I felt like all this freedom and it felt like a relief for me. And then they kind of made me like a project manager. Like whenever there was a new thing that was happening, they would have me kind of figure out who's going to do what in a timeline. And I was in charge of this little retail shop that was going to be inside of the market that was not going to be food items. It was going to be more like makers and creatives to let us place wholesale orders with them. So I went to the indie flea and some other like craft markets with my business cards, and just anytime I saw something that looked cool, I walked up and said like, hey, can we buy some stuff wholesale from you to put in the shop? And I became friends with these people, and it was
I'm
so
sure
fun.
they were so excited that you wanted to be placed in a store. I'm sure they love that.
And a few of them were able to quit their 9-to-5 jobs and go full time in their craft because of the orders that we were placing. It was
Are you serious?
So that was like just like the dream of like, oh my gosh, I'm still helping people. I'm still making a difference in people's lives. And we had no budget, which was really fun. So like I could just buy whatever I wanted.
You were like the fairy godmother, just going around to these events and picking.
Like, I'll buy this, we'll buy that.
Right.
Yeah, it was so cool. So then like eventually like I would go to the like garage door spot, like the, you know, the loading dock to pick up their order when they would drop off. And then occasionally they'd be like, do you want to get coffee sometime? Like, you're cool. And I'm like, yes, you're cool. Like,
you are a very cool girl.
Oh, stop. You're cool. But I'm like, I would love to, like, I'm so nerdy, but okay. Like because they're like artists and I'm like, you want to hang out with me? Okay. You know, I'm like, so just like amazed by what they're doing and these cool crafts and things they're making. So they would ask me things like, oh, I have to figure out how to price this item. I don't know how much it even costs to make it. And we would talk about these things because, you know, we were selling it retail. So there would be like, well, how much are you going to sell it for? So we kind of got talking numbers. And they were like, I was like, well, I'll just make you a spreadsheet where you can cost out, you know, each item that you know, each material that you use to figure out what it costs you. And then you can add labor, and then you can, you know, add packaging and all that, and figure out your retail price. And they're like, wait, spreadsheets? What? Like, I was like, oh yeah, I can just make a custom spreadsheet for you. So then kind of word started getting around Tampa Bay that like, there's this girl and she'll make you like spreadsheets. And this one woman, she was like, could you just start doing my bookkeeping too? And I was like, what's that? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but maybe. So I bought Bookkeeping for Dummies, the yellow book. I still have it in my office as just to remind me where I came from. You know?
Your humble beginnings.
Yeah, exactly. And so she was like, if I can get like a break with how much I pay you to be your guinea pig, I will let you like mess up my books and practice. And I was like, okay, like, sure. So I still worked at Locale, but I started doing that on the side. And I kind of got busy with a lot of people. And then I took like a pro advisor course with QuickBooks to really hone in on the skills. And I started meeting CPAs because I didn't know how to do the tax returns. So I needed a CPA still to do, you know, the taxes. So I would meet these CPAs and they're like, who is this girl like doing the bookkeeping for all of our clients, you know? So a few of them took me under their wings. A few of them hired me, and I would work at their office and still try to maintain my little book of business too. And one of them was like, you need to go get your CPA license. Like, you're still in your 20s, you're not married, you don't have kids, you're never going to do it if you wait any longer. Like, just do it. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go to grad school. I don't want to get a master. Like, that's just such
a lot.
There was exams I had to take to get licensed as a teacher. And I was like, I already took exams. Like, no, I'm good. But something was like telling me like, just
you should try.
Rip it off like a Band-Aid. Just get it done. And then you'll have it for life, you know? And I had nothing better to do, honestly. So I was like, okay.
You weren't making macaroons yet.
I wasn't making macarons. I had no hobbies, no boyfriend, nothing. So I was like, okay, I'll do this. School can be my boyfriend for a while.
Right.
And I love being like, getting school supplies and all that. So I was like, all right,
That's the
I'll
best
get
part.
exactly. So I was like, I kind of do miss that, so I'll do it. And at this point, my dad was like, I told you so. Like I told you you were
Oh,
going to
I'm
be.
sure he was feeling so like proud that he guessed it.
Yes. And I was like, well, no, this is different. Like I'm doing a different type of accounting. I'm going to help people. Like it's meaningful. Like I was able to get people more profitable so that they could like bring more money to their families. And I was able to, help them do these like really meaningful hands-on things. Like I was more conscious with them. I was more, aware of their whole person, not just treating them like a
Right.
number. Like it was a more, a real experience. And he's like, well, it looks like you found a way to like rebrand accounting to work for you. I'm like, yeah, I guess so. So that really motivated me to get the master's degree done and to take all 4 CPA exams, which had really low
Oh my
pass rates,
gosh.
which was really scary. But I worked full-time at an accounting firm. I worked, I think 3 or 4 total, but one I stayed at the longest because I really liked that firm. And that was great because I learned all the tax side of things and just best practices and processes and workflows and, all those procedures and all the technical knowledge. And I was approaching the end of my CPA licensure process, and one of the partners at the firm was like, okay, Rebecca, you've got this big book of business of all these bookkeeping clients. You know how to do taxes now. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to right now you have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You've been doing your own side business. We know about it. We're okay with it. But like, if you're going to be a CPA now, it's probably time to just pick one, like, either work for us
Right.
and bring your clients to us, or, leave us and go do this on your own. And I was like, well, I don't know which one to do because I really enjoy working here. And he was like, you know what, just go out on your own and you'll always have a desk here. No
Wow.
ego about it, nothing. He's like, but that's the advice that he was given at my age. And that's what he did. And he was like, and I have to kind of pay it for, like, kind of
Right.
the cycle, of, and he's like, not every accountant has a personality of being outgoing and being able to, bring in clients and he's like, it takes years. It will probably take 8 to 10 years for you to get to partner status when you are allowed to go do those things in a firm. You're going to just be a worker bee for like 10 years here before we even let you go do that. So your personality doesn't work for our business model, really. So you should really just go do your own thing. And he's like, it'll suit you. Like, I can just tell. And we are still, in touch still. And I still have a lot of friends from that firm that I talk to all the time. And we see each other at different accounting events.
That is so special that he was that honest he was genuine enough to put you on the right path.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was just like, my job is to help businesses grow. And why are you an exception to that? Like you have a bit, and he didn't feel threatened by what I was doing. And, he has, over 70 employees and works with really, really large companies. And I help more like the underdogs and the smaller businesses or brand new businesses. So we have a different, clientele anyway. So, we're able to just kind of be there for each other, and we refer business to each other all the time. So
wow,
it's really cool.
So how old were you at that time?
I was in my late 20s, probably like 27, 28.
Okay, and then you started Conscious Accounting. Was it called Conscious Accounting at the time?
No, in 2016 I started, and I just called it like Rebecca Friedman LLC, which was one of my clients at one point gave me the name. She was like, you're like a conscious accountant. Like you like think of things like you're just more woke. Like you're more like you bring this awareness and this like awake. So, and I feel like the word conscious is kind of having a moment right now. So I'm glad that, I picked that name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then it just it was still the same company, but just kind of rebranded it. Yeah.
So if I'm Correct. You specialize in small businesses and newer businesses.
Yeah. Generally, I can do, we'll do tax returns for any size business, really. I mean, if you're a publicly traded company like Coca-Cola or something, you have a whole tax department that does your taxes.
Right.
But the tax side of it is really any type of business size. But the bookkeeping side, there becomes a point where a company is so big and complex, mostly with product-based businesses rather than service-based businesses, that we really recommend that they just have an in-house accountant, or like an accounting department even. And there's been times where I've told a client, like, you guys are too big for us. Like we would either need to like multiply in size, or you would need to, get an accounting department, because there's just a lot more day-to-day work that needs to get done, and people need to, there doing it. I do like some CFO consulting for larger firms, where they just need someone to kind of come in, look at how things are operating, and advise them on how to build, a proper accounting department. So I can help larger businesses in that way. But for the most part, we really are passionate about working with either people who are just thinking about starting a business, or they have a small business, or they're, like a local restaurant or coffee shop, or like a brick and mortar location, or just like an online service business where,
So let's say that someone listening is, maybe they just started their business, or they started it during quarantine, something like that. What kinds of things should they come to you for? Because they might not even know that they need that kind of guidance yet.
Yeah, so I would say if they are thinking that they might want to become like a legal entity structure, like an LLC or an S corp or a partnership, or if they've kind of heard these buzzwords and they aren't sure which one to pick, that's really when you'd want to talk to an accountant to make sure you don't pick the wrong one, and that there's not any like bad consequences for that choice. Um, Also, if you are a little unsure about like deductions and what you're able to deduct on your tax return once you have a business, or you're not even sure how to file your taxes once you become a business owner, that's a great time to talk to an accountant. And sometimes I will tell a client, just use TurboTax, but here's where you go. And just like, if I feel like the personality that is more DIY, and that if I can just tell them a few things, they'll run with it. I always encourage that, because I think it's great for people to know what's going on with their books. But there is a certain level where, we may advise you to switch to a new entity structure, like an S corp or something, where you really can't use TurboTax for that, because it's a corporate tax return and it's more complex. And so it's good at the beginning to just kind of get a nice little checklist from an accountant of like, these are just all the things you need to consider to make sure your ducks are in a row. Because there's definitely some, legal implications of setting up your entity wrong. There's liability stuff that can happen if you're not separating your business and personal finances from from each other. There's tax, evasion that can occur if you're doing things the wrong way there. So yeah, it never hurts to just check in with someone.
Yeah, and I feel like the conscious side of conscious accounting was just shining through, because you were talking about how when someone comes to you, sometimes you decide to point them in a different direction towards a resource that they can DIY themselves. And I think that's really important, because as a small business owner, it can be a little intimidating when it comes to accounting, taxes. So to know that you and your like small team is there to support you and just turn you in the right direction, it's really comforting. And like, I feel comforted when I talk to you, because I know that I can trust you and that you're going to do it for the right reasons.
Exactly. Yeah. I find that I slowly have planted seeds, over the past several years. And a lot of times I'm turning away business, but it all because of that integrity and just actually letting people trust me, and like showing them what it's like to work with someone that they can trust, that I still find ways to, pay my bills and make a living. But it's just such a more genuine, real way. And I had to make sure that I felt like the work I was doing was meaningful and helping people. That was just a non-negotiable for me. in my career. So
Right, because it aligns with you and what you were looking for from the time that you were 5 or 7 organizing the books in your room. Like, you just want to help people bring more money back to their families, or just create like a money strategy moving forward for their business. What are some of the biggest mistakes or misconceptions in the accounting field with small businesses in particular?
one is that you have to be an LLC to be able to do business. You can just do business under your personal name and you can still file what's called a Schedule C on your personal tax return. That's just basically like a little extra page that gets stapled to your tax return. It's all still one document that just summarizes, the money that you had come in and the money that went out for your business. But you can just use your personal name and your social security number. You don't have to file anything like that. So you can start very small and just be super basic. And that's called a sole proprietor, when you're just on your own. You don't have to get that LLC right away. The LLC really just protects you if, let's say you took out like a business loan and you were defaulting on that loan. A creditor would have a more difficult time coming after your personal assets than if you didn't have assets to repay the loan. So it creates that separation a little bit, like legally, between your business and your personal. But it's not like a foolproof way to make sure that like you like can't get sued or anything like that. Like you still need like liability insurance and things like that. So if that seems like not applicable to you at the stage you're at, like, don't waste your money on becoming an LLC right away. Every state is different with how much it costs to be an LLC. In California, it's over $700 a year to be an LLC. Wow. So just like take your time with that. Another one is S Corp. So that has like a cool sound to it. Like maybe it sounds like a superhero or something. I don't know. But it's like so trendy. People are thinking like, oh, I have to be an S Corp because this cool, trendy donut shop is an S Corp. And they told me that. So I want to be one too. But that's really only at a certain profit threshold. Is it worth it? Like, does the benefits outweigh the cost of becoming that? When you are making around $30,000 of profit per year, so profit is that sales minus expenses, that bottom line number, then talk to an accountant about the S Corp thing. But until then, just don't worry about it, because it's actually going to cost you more money, not save you money. So that's kind of like a misconception, is like, I need to get all of these like licenses and like LLCs and everything immediately, which you don't. It's okay to take it slow with all of that. Trying to think of other misconceptions. One is like that you can just write off anything in your life. Like, oh, just write it off. Like I don't know if anyone's seen Schitt's Creek, but there's an episode where the son, like, he starts a business and he's like, oh, it's a write-off. It's a write-off. And the dad's like, do you even know what that means? And he's like, yeah, I write it off. And the dad is like, what do you think happens when you write something off? Like what, like, and he's like, well, I don't know, the government does something with it. Like you just write it off. And he's like, who writes it off? And he's like, the government. And so that is something I have seen where people are just like, oh, now that I own a business, like, I'm going to Lululemon this weekend and I think I need some new yoga pants because I'm a business owner now and I'm writing it off. So my rule of thumb is, if you are buying something and it's really only because you're doing business, like because you are a business owner and you're not going to use it in your personal life, really, it's really something that's specific that you would only be buying because you own this business. Like normally you wouldn't need to buy it. Right. Then it's a write-off. Then you can deduct it. Then it's a business expense. But if it's something where you're like, well, no, like I was always gonna off hours as well, then it's not really a business expense.
Okay. Well, those are great misconceptions, because I feel like a lot of times people just take their accounting advice from another small business owner that they know in a completely different industry. What are some examples of write-offs? So let's say like for, I don't know, a freelancer who does digital marketing, because we have a lot of freelancer listeners. So what are some examples of things that they could write off and things that maybe they think they could write off that would not be applicable?
Yeah. So a lot of those freelancers are probably working from home. They can write off their home internet and their personal cell phone if they are using them for business. You could get nitty gritty and write off like just the percent of it that you're using for business versus personal.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are like mostly using it for business, you could just write off your full cell phone bill. You can't write off like your home cable bill and things like that.
Right.
But but for things that like, you're paying for internet every month, you're paying for this cell phone every month, and you're using it really to run your business as well, just you can write that off. You can take a home office deduction as well. That is going to be a percentage of your rent or mortgage and utilities for the home. That's going to just be the percentage of like how big your office is in your home. So if your office doesn't take up much space in your home, it's really just going to be a small
Mm-hmm.
percentage of your home costs. So that's why I say to write off the internet and the cell phone even more so, like separately, because you probably are using it more than like 15%,
Right. Right.
for business. So it really could be a bigger deduction. Travel and mileage is another one. So sometimes a freelancer, let's say they're flying to New York City because they're going to do like some photo shoot or whatever, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
go to a museum and get inspired, and then they're going to whatever. If this is going to then be like, and we're going to go see family and we're going to go do that, and
Right.
then I'm going to this Broadway show because I'm excited, you really have to think about like what percentage is business versus pleasure and only deduct that percent. So if it's 50-50, then you just take all the expenses for the trip and divide it by 2 and only deduct half of it. If you strongly feel like that the main purpose, like almost 100% purpose, is the business related, then you can deduct
Mm-hmm.
everything for the trip, meals included too. And then I would say mileage is another one. So if you are commuting like from home to an office to your office, then that is not considered a business expense. You can't deduct a commute. But if you are at work, which if your home is where you work, if you're at work and you have to go drive anywhere for supplies, to go see a client, to do anything, that mileage is deductible. So it just kind of depends where you're driving, but
Right.
driving is definitely deductible too. As far as meals go, you only get to deduct 50% of your meal. So I think the IRS knows that people get a little crazy with the meal deduction. So that's why they only let you deduct half. That's the only deduction that has like a 50% limit like that. But if you are working while you're eating or discussing work with someone else while you're eating or getting coffee, you can definitely write that off, but just know that the IRS already has you figured out and they're only going to let you deduct half of it.
Yeah. And then, so with a lot of those deductions, it's like tracking all of the receipts. So, how do you recommend that small business owners or freelancers keep track of all those receipts, whether they decide to DIY their own business or if they come to you at the end of the year?
Yeah, so I would say first tip is to have a separate bank account and a separate business credit card for your business from your personal, because if you are strict about only using the business credit card with a business expense and then only paying that credit card bill with your business bank account, and even if you don't have any money in your business bank account yet, just move some of your personal money into there to
Mm-hmm.
fund your business, that's okay. But if you keep all that separate, then if you print a bank statement, you can look at it and everything on there is a business expense or business income because you've separated it. There's no more need for like a highlighter to sift through your
Right.
personal credit card and find everything, which this takes some discipline because you probably have all these like subscriptions and things that are super embedded into your personal life. So you need to like go and find all of those, take them and change like where you pay
Mm-hmm.
those things out of and get them switched over, and then really be strict about that, because then it's super easy. You can literally go onto your bank or credit card website and download your transactions into a spreadsheet, like a CSV or spreadsheet Excel file, and then just categorize them and organize them and to add them up and total them all just in a spreadsheet without even having to do any data entry.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that is a great way. If you have a service-based business that you're just like, there's not that many transactions, like money comes in, but there's like might not need anything fancy at all. I
Mhm.
recommend keeping your business and personal banks separate just for the liability side of it, just to like not mix business with pleasure in case like you were ever to get sued. You could really show like a separation. Oops, got my coffee. It's empty, luckily.
That's good.
But yeah. But so I always think it's a good rule of thumb. But if you don't have a lot of transactions going on, you don't have to get like too fancy with your bookkeeping. You could do pen and paper. You could do a spreadsheet. You could just do like a note Word document, something to just track everything throughout the year. If you wanted to kind of advance a level, you could use like an online cloud-based software, something like QuickBooks, or there's a few other ones like Xero is one, where you can connect your bank account and then all the transactions will come in and you can categorize them and sort them. And that's nice because then you can see reports to actually understand
Right.
how your business is doing throughout the year. So you can understand goals and growth and make business decisions and see where you're spending too much or too little, or, you know, if numbers are getting better or worse, and catch those things before year end. And then I would say if bookkeeping is like really getting in the way of you running your business and it's just not a good use of your time anymore, but you really still want to know how you're going to sit and do all 12 months of bookkeeping at the end of the year, that's when it's time to talk about outsourcing it to a bookkeeper or to an accounting firm, where they can actually just take that off your plate and then once a month prepare some financials for you to show you how the business is doing. But I really always recommend trying it yourself first, because there's something to be said about actually being the one who's in there looking at everything, because it actually forces you to look at how you're spending your money and how you're making your money and getting intimate with your business in a financial way.
Yeah. So what is that revenue threshold when it comes time to actually outsource the accounting side of things?
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to give a revenue threshold because, I mean, let's say you just have this like amazing online course or something that you sell, and or you know, some sort of online service, and you're making like, you know, $300,000 a month doing it, like tons of money is coming in, but you still only have like 10 expense transactions a month because your overhead is super low,
Right.
and it's just like really easy. Then I would say you never need someone to do your books for you. You could always just track, you know, your revenue, money coming in, but money going out, there's not that many. So it's really not that complicated. So I really kind of go based off of like how much of your time are you spending? If you're going to fully outsource, it's going to cost you a couple $100s a month to have someone else do it for you. So that's another way to look at it, of just like, is there an extra, you know, between $300 and $500 a month in my budget, that is there cash flow for outsourcing?
Right.
So that's that. I would say maybe looking at, do I have enough revenue coming in that I wouldn't notice $500 being gone each month on that, you know, and you get that peace of mind that you're good to go for tax season. That might be a way to approach deciding.
Yeah, I love that you advocate just for figuring out a system that works for you, whether that is pen and paper or using a spreadsheet, just something to get you started. And I just love that you're like advocating for them to do that.
Yeah, and it's so personal. Like when I was a teacher, we learned that every student has a different learning style. You know, some learn from listening, some learn from doing, and some learn from seeing. And it's like the same way when you're a grown up, you know,
Right.
there's a million different ways to do the same thing. And I see clients come in, a lot of like creatives and artists that just always have an actual notebook and they're actually writing down like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so interesting that's like, I'm like typing and, you know, everyone's just,
I
you
know,
know,
right?
so yeah.
So with the holiday season coming up, I'm sure a lot of small businesses want to get their books in order before hopefully lots of sales are coming in.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that they can work with you right now as a small business?
Yeah, so I do offer consulting calls where, you know, we could pick an hour, a half hour, however long you want to talk. We could talk for 3 hours if you want, where you can tell me like what's going on in your business. And I like to call it like a business therapy session. I just don't know if I'm allowed to call it that,
Right.
you know, because I'm not a therapist, but sort of just like to give you peace of mind and help you figure out, make sure you're doing things right, like a checkup kind of for the business. So that's like a way if you're like, I want to get a ton of advice. I want to be able to pick your brain and ask questions. So I don't mind paying for your time, but I don't know that I actually want to like pay you every month to do something. I just sort of want to get as much advice as possible and then just do it as needed. I recommend that as a great first step because you might not need to pay us every month to do something for you. You might just want to pay once a quarter, once a year, even to just ask a bunch of questions. If they're ever just quick little questions, you can always just email us. We don't nickel and dime people for things like that. So yeah, you can, I would always rather someone be set up correctly than to feel afraid to ask a question because it's out of their budget or something like that. Another way that you can work with us is that we are about to launch a course, actually.
So exciting.
Yeah. So the course is going to come out.
Wait,
Steps you need to do.
Oh, here, start from the beginning. You froze for a little. Yeah. You froze when it said when it's coming out.
Yeah, so it's coming out in January.
Okay.
And it's going to have like a couple different launches throughout the year. But it's going to teach you everything you need to know about starting a business. So the things to do, the things that you don't need to do, what bookkeeping even is, and how to know when to do it and how to do it and what your choices are, and then taxes and what they all mean and what types of taxes there are, so that you're just like really set up. And we have a bookkeeping spreadsheet that we give you with it that you could just use to do all your bookkeeping, and it even generates a profit and loss report for you automatically. So
wow,
gives you all the tools. So that's like, if you just know yourself and you're more of like a DIY person and you want to do it yourself, you just don't know how, that's a really good option. If you're just like, I just want to never ever see done, you can always call us and we can talk about outsourcing. And then if you are like just feeling like you're not really interested in doing your own tax return anymore, you just feel like there's too many moving parts as a business owner, you could always do your own bookkeeping throughout the year, but then just have us do your taxes. And we can collaborate with you and, review your book, every deduction, so we don't miss anything. So we could kind of tag team it that way too.
That's great. So there's really options at every single level, and I'll make sure to link down below so they can just click directly through, because I can vouch for the strategy calls or the calls where you help.
Yeah.
Just with every single aspect. I felt so relieved after I got off the phone with you. So to all of our listeners, I can definitely vouch for you because I went from very confused to feeling very aligned on that call.
That's so good to hear. That makes all of it worth it. I'm so glad.
But thank you so much for joining us today, Rebecca.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was so fun chatting with you.
Of course.
Yeah.